thank you, Rob, and welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for participating. This is going to be a highly visual event. I'm really going to be more of a background narrator from a script. That's the only way I figured this would really work in a 30-minute period of time. So let's begin. San Francisco, 1967, the summer of love. Young people descended upon the city looking for peace, love, drugs, something new, radical, anti-establishment. Along with the growing psychedelic scene, this influx of energy and hope, commercialized and promoted by everyone looking to make a buck, created a perfect storm of radical ideas, psychedelic visions, and artistic creativity. By 1967, the San Francisco psychedelic scene was about a year old, but the concert posters, a retinal buzz of clashing, saturated colors designed for shows at the Avalon and the Fillmore, were already popular collector's items among members of the counterculture and young residents of the Bay Area. 5 young graphic artists, Wes Wilson, Alton Kelley, Stanley Mouse Miller, Victor Moscoso, and Rick Griffin, had already established themselves as dominant masters of the psychedelic poster. The popularity of psychedelic posters was noted in the Newsweek issue of March 6, 1967. But first, let's back up to the previous year to better understand how we got to this special summer 50 years ago. 1966 began with the Trips Festival in January, the link between the McKenzie acid tests of 1965 and what became the dance hall concert scene in 1966. The Beat Generation greats commingled with the younger LSD generation to protest the war and preach utopianism. The Psychedelic Shop opened on January 3rd on Haight Street. A month later, the first musical concert was held at the Fillmore Auditorium, followed by the first concert at the Avalon Ballroom in late April. While the poster by Peter Bailey on the left is straightforward, Wes Wilson's on the right shows the beginning stylistics of an artistic movement to be labeled psychedelic. Mass media went moral panic and provided lurid stories of drug sex orgies, mind expansion never to return, and the influence of psychedelic drugs on art, music, and culture in general. The state of California made LSD possession and use a crime on October 6th, and the Love Pageant rally was held to mark this ominous prohibition. On Halloween weekend, Kesey held his last acid test with the graduation ceremony. And 1 year after the psychedelic movement began, the gathering of the tribes at the Human Bee Inn opened on January 14th, 1967, with Leary spouting his tune in, turn on, drop out mantra, Alpert Ginsberg, all local acid rock bands, and others speaking on the establishment and war, asking for a new dimension to peace. Media response to this movement and accompanying lifestyle that spring was negative and, of course, shocking. So it may be surprising that a summer devoted to love would soon be at hand. By April, Gray Line Tours was busing tourists into the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood to see Hippieville in action. In May, the song, San Francisco, Be Sure to Wear Flowers in Your Hair, written by John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas, was released and immediately went to #3 on the US charts. The prelude to that summer was the famous Monterey Pops Festival, with Jimi Hendrix's incendiary performance, followed by the opening of the Summer of Love with the Solstice Party at Golden Gate Park. The Summer of Love was heavily marketed by the city for its own commercial purposes. The poster on the right lists the telephone hotline to call to find out what was happening. At the peak of this psychedelic movement, an art exhibit exalted psychedelic poster art to fine art status, the Joint Show, held July 17, 1967. Before we remember the show, a quick review of both music, concert, poster art, and the past influences on the 5 poster artists represented in the show. Concert poster art was simple and straightforward, designed to convey quickly the most important information about the event. Simple colors, block, old-face lettering, and perhaps a photo of the performers were the norm. It was easy to read, a bit colorful, cheap to produce. Note on the right the human being was promoted in this traditional poster design. The transition to psychedelic design was abrupt. It went from this to this. The principles were stretched out, difficult to read from a distance lettering. Color contrast and graphic illustrations were reversed from the traditional approach. The viewer had to take time to absorb it all. The Alton Kelley poster on the left from October '65 shows the change in lettering, while the Wes Wilson poster on the right from April '66 shows the advent of color schemes. Drug themes became popular illustrations, as is shown in the Mouse Kelley poster on the left of the famous zigzag cigarette paper container from June '66. Wilson's Red Flames poster on the right from July '66 is considered by many to be the first psychedelic poster. There were a number of artistic influences on the psychedelic poster artists. Mouse and Kelley copied the famous 1896 Mucha poster for their Avalon Ballroom poster of October '66. They would go to the library and scour the Art Nouveau and Art Deco art books for ideas. Wilson also copied many of Mucha's stylistic elements for his Fillmore poster of May '67. Mouse and Kelley followed the lead of another famous French Art Nouveau artist, Jules Charest, known for his Vin Mariani coca wine posters of the late 19th century, for their January '67 poster. Wes Wilson's greatest influence, seen in his posters from the end of 1966, came from another Art Nouveau movement, the Vienna Secessionists, notably artist Alfred Roller. He was also influenced by contemporary artists in the op art and pop art movements, such as Victor Vasarely's Danya from 1964, as shown in his poster for Fillmore in May of '66. Victor Moscoso was greatly influenced by his Yale art school teacher, Josef Albers, as can be seen in his poster of June '67, and by another of Albers' students, Rich Anaskevich. Moscoso's poster on the right was created just 2 years after Intrinsic Harmony. Moscoso also drew on earlier influences such as the artist Francis Picabia for his poster. See his July '67 poster on the right. And he designed some posters so that images would shift or disappear under black light. The artist even hit on the same theme, as seen in Moscoso's and Wilson's Peacock posters from March '67, based on many such images from the late 19th century. The one in the center is from Albert Turbane, circa 1895. Who were the big five psychedelic poster artists? Rick Griffin was a California surfer dude who started his career in illustration art by creating the famous surfer character after Murph the Surf. He tended to use drug themes, and he also used Native American, Old West, and other cultural imagery in most of his posters. Stan Mouse began his artistic career creating wildly insane pinstriping and detailed imagery on hot rods, motorcycles, other vehicles, and also airbrushing t-shirts in Detroit before moving to San Francisco in 1965. Alton Kelley lacked drafting abilities and was more of a collagist, who also pinstriped hot rods and created early posters based more on a traditional style while incorporating collages, until he teamed up with Mouse, and they started to create together very colorful, exotic posters that contributed to many elements to the psychedelic style. Wes Wilson's first work, beyond his wedding invitation, was this anti-war poster from 1965, seen on the right. But his major contribution was in changing the lettering style, stretching, elongating, dragging the letters all over the poster, filling every available space, and he moved the lettering into a fluid female form in many of his posters. Moscoso, remember, took Albers' color contrast theory and applied it to his posters, especially the Neon Rose series for the Matrix that began in early 1967. Like many graphic artists, however, the 5 poster designers sought to be taken seriously as artists and desired an exhibition at an art gallery. They got their wish when they were approached by the Moore Gallery to organize a traditional gallery exhibition. This group exhibition of the Big 5 poster artists opened on July 17, 1967 at the Charles Moore Gallery on Sutter Street in San Francisco. The exhibition was titled Joint Show, and each artist designed their own poster for the event. The Joint Show was a pioneering event in the evolution of psychedelic poster art. This was really the first time that an artistic spotlight was shown on these very talented men at a high-profile gallery exhibition. Up to this point, they were generally regarded as just the poster guys. A press conference was held for the Joint Show on Tuesday, July 11th. ABC, NBC, and the Bay Area press were present along with the Berkeley Barb. Moore said these artists soon would be doing oil paintings rather than posters. Now, the artists at the press conference were non-committal, responding to the media's questions. And I'll read directly from the Berkeley Barb's review of that press conference. "Do you think this will help us to understand your art?" asked the big media. Quiet shrugs. "Do you think psychedelic art is the next step?" No answer. "Well, do you want us to understand you or not?" No answer. An uptight newsman said, "Well, you called this press conference. What is it for? Is there a point?" "Well, we get to meet you and you get to meet us in the flesh," said Moscoso. He went on, "You ask us these funny questions. There's a gap. Is it the next step? I don't know what you're talking about." Wilson asked the press a question. "Are your ties comfortable?" The press hurried to appease him, except for one who muttered, "Yeah, but would you want your daughter to marry one?" To promote the show, they created an invitation portfolio, a facsimile slipcase of an oversized replica of a pack of zigzag cigarette rolling papers, containing about 19 enclosures. This was a nod to the popular Mouse Kelly zigzag poster of June '66 shown in an earlier slide. There were 2 announcements for the show: the mustard-colored postcard you saw just a few slides back, featuring a group poster of the Big 5, and one elaborately colored and lithographed in psychedelic colors designed by Wes Wilson that you see at the bottom of the slide under the container, both the front and there's the back. Here you can see all of the enclosures which came inside this promotional container. There were 5 to 7 postcard-sized rock posters called handbills, lithographed in color by the artists for musical groups, including the Grateful Dead and Quicksilver Messenger Service. Most all handbills used in this promotion are included here. There were also 8 mustard-colored biographies of the artist involved, and they are as follows. A folded Rick Griffin bio featuring his famous image of a Native American smoker on the outside, and an illustration for Allen Ginsberg's Renaissance or Die on the inside. A folded, there's the inside. A folded Wes Wilson bio featured a drawing and self-portrait on the outside, and an oration by Wilson on the inside. A folded Stanley Mouse bio featuring a natal chart and a self-photo on the outside with artwork on the inside. A folded Alton Kelley bio featuring a Kelley on Kelley statement and a self-photo on the outside, and again with artwork on the inside. And a folded Victor Moscoso bio featuring 2 self-portraits on the outside and the cycle trip on the inside. In addition, there were single sheets that have a photograph on the front and a bio on the back for the 3 lesser-known Bay Area artists who are also participating in the show. Gerhard Nicholson, a creator of light shows. Richard William Richard William Leonard, a creator of light shows, Gerhard Nicholson, a creator of mobile sculptures, and finally, Ralph Cheese, a painter. Music was provided by Country Joe and the Fish and many others. Now, each of the 5 posters that the artist designed just for the show reflected the artist's own style, but it was Griffin's image of the pack of marijuana cigarettes, replete with the borrowed image of the Orientalist zigzag man, that became one of the iconic images of the psychedelic era. Wes Wilson chose a larger size for his poster, with a design featuring an image of a nude woman whose voluptuous form comprised the text regarding the artist and the show. In her hand, she holds a yin-yang symbol, which reads, "Joint Show." This is now one of the most famous images in the University of Virginia's poster collection. Victor Moscoso chose an image of a reclining nude as well, but juxtaposed her with a slice of cherry pie. This poster has a pink and blue stripe border with the title, and it's sort of a continuous psychedelic strip, both flopped and regular, at the top. In the center is a double exposed image of a man in white and green holding a bar above his head while flying goose on either side. On the left is his original photo collage with hand lettering and line drawing as a setup for his poster. The designs by Alton Kelley and Stanley Mouse featured collaged items but were more abstract than many of their typical concert posters. The figure, by the way, in Kelley's poster on the left is Ron Pigpen McKernan of the Grateful Dead. All joint show posters were printed on 3 different paper stocks. The first was a glossy coated index stock, the second was a textured vellum stock, and the third was a foil stock, by far the rarest. Norman Moore had some additional posters printed on glossy stock 1 month after the show. They are indistinguishable from the unnumbered ones printed before the show. No joint show posters were printed after August 1967. Each artist also signed and numbered 50 of these for the show. The show was advertised in the Berkeley Barb on July 14th. The preview party opened Monday afternoon. And by the evening, the buzz had generated huge crowds and massive publicity, including a review in the San Francisco Chronicle. This here is Alton Kelley in conversation with a gallery patron at the event. Rick Griffin at the time said the show was a great success. The poster art wave culminated really with this show. Holy shit, if I had no idea, none of us did, Moscoso remembers of the show. We did posters to get people to go to the dance hall. Sure, it got smart, we did it to entertain them, and the information became entertaining. Here I am doing what I want to do and getting paid. Goodbye, Van Gogh syndrome. The posters from the event are well known and hold a place in every concert poster collection. Only 11 days after the show's opening, joint show posters were being offered in a massive sale. The Griffin and Wilson images are unquestionably the most popular of the 5, each a classic 60s image. They were pulled from walls, street corner lampposts, hand billboards, and hung up in the rooms of the young people who had descended on Haight-Ashbury. Original posters in '67 were selling on the secondary market for $35, today for many hundreds of dollars. Unfortunately, the joint show was a short-lived phenomenon. It was unclear the final day of the show, but it was advertised in the Berkeley Barb through September 7th. Although the 5 psychedelic artists were innovative poster designers who had pioneered an art form, they were not yet sophisticated fine artists who did the type of work that fit easily into a gallery setting. Furthermore, the young people who were drawn to their work did not possess the financial resources to collect fine art and make the joint show participants successful artists. Consequently, the joint show was the only attempt at serious exhibition of psychedelia held in the 1960s. While a milestone event of the summer, it is rarely remembered and discussed today. On September 1st, 1967, Griffin, alongside the Big Five, except for Mouse, was featured in a Life cover story called The Great Poster Wave. But the show, and subsequent publicity did not succeed in promoting their artistic agenda. Yet, according to Chris Mount, the director of typography at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, psychedelic poster art is the only graphic design movement that originated in the US. The Psychedelic shop closed on October 4th. 2 days later, Wes Wilson opened an exhibition of his posters, but unfortunately, the death of the hippie was announced the same day. And the psychedelic era began to wane, though its influence is certainly felt even today. The Haight-Ashbury had become a commercialized tourist destination like Fisherman's Wharf. Poster artists moved out of town, turning to underground comics, album covers, drug art, and anti-war posters. The quality of poster art dropped off after the show. Moscoso remembers, "By this time, I'm starting to get tired of posters. Gee, I'm tired of them." I'm with Rick Griffin. He had been a cartoonist before the posters, and we came up with a plan of doing a full-color magazine. We called it Zap Comics. The Joint Show 86 opened on June 17th, 1986, a month and a year before the 20th anniversary, at the 60s Poster Gallery on Columbus Avenue in San Francisco. All 5 artists from the original show were in attendance to, quote, slide back into the psychedelic 60s at our sensational poster signing soiree. Come celebrate with us the 19th anniversary of the first Joint Show. 60s food, 60s fun, 60s friend, 80s style. The following year, in 1987, the Big Five artists collaborated on the 20th anniversary poster for the Summer of Love. I hope you enjoyed the experience of remembering the Joint Show with me. Perhaps 50 years later, we can reflect on the Summer of Love and wonder today why we cannot experience that again. Thank you.